let me start with when I actually had a 9 to 5 job. I'm not sure about the 5 part, but from a different era in the strange field called advertising. So quickly, let me give you a distinction between two creatures that you find in an ad agency. One is an unlikable, unfriendly, strange person carrying a stick. They're called client servicing people. And then you have these subservient, unorthodox people who live in creative, and there's always a war that goes on throughout the year. And these people with sticks always come to you on a Friday evening at 6 o'clock, 10 to 6 perhaps, and give you what they call a creative brief, and the ad is required at 9 o'clock in the morning on Saturday, even though the client wants it on Tuesday. So that war continues for a lifetime. So I've been a victim, and as you can imagine which side of the fence I was on, because it's the way I described those lovely creatures with sticks. But there's a method to my madness. I want to very quickly narrate a little incident that taught me something that I think is relevant to the topic I'm coming to. I know there are a few of you in this room who know about this, but for those of you who don't, let me quickly share it with you. We were all taught about what a creative brief is. It's a piece of paper with lots of words, generally in black and white, that describe what they want these creative people to execute and do and bring to the client and maybe to a newspaper or a television channel or wherever it might be. So we went through months and many, many months of receiving these creative briefs until I asked that, is this the only form that it comes in? And then I was narrated something that stuck with me forever. It was sometime in Delhi, 47 degrees, for those of you who've actually visited the wonderful national capital in the month of May. 47 degrees, hot as hell, never mind that it's a dry heat, it's still hot. And this was the era where this chap with a stick, client servicing, remember him? He had this old Fiat car, no air conditioning in those days, and he wanted to take his lovely young, happening creative team out for a brief to the client's office. So he said, everyone pile into my Fiat, no air conditioning, 7 people piled into that car, squashed, and they headed out sweating, smelly, heading to the client's office. Halfway through, the Fiat, naturally, it's a previous generation car, it breaks down. Nobody knows how to fix it. And the creative people who are known for their flowery language, not just on the paper, abused this chap with his stick and told him what they think of him. And he said, just hang on a second. Suddenly this other vehicle drove by, and it was a little van, and the client servicing chap said, can we just jump in here? And everyone jumped in. It was an air-conditioned van. Everyone fitted in nicely, not like squashed into that little Fiat. And the van did a U-turn and headed back to the office. And the creative guys said, yeah, boss, I'm going to the client's office. What's happening here? Not going to the client's office. And this guy turned around and said, no, we're not going to the client's office. We're going back to our office. And that, folks, is a product that I want you to write an ad for. It's called a Maruti van. It's spacious. It's big. It's air-conditioned. Now go out and write an ad. You won't get a piece of paper that's called a creative brief. Simple as that. So why is it relevant to what I'm talking about? Well, let me start by showing you a picture of myself in my office. Not quite lying on the grass, but nonetheless quite picturesque. A lot of people ask about, you travel the world, but what about your actual office? Can you send us a picture in your office? So there I am, sitting in my office at my office chair, doing my work. Now, why is the story I told you relevant? Because the very fact that I could go up there and do what I did and what the entire game of cricket evolved into is because it transformed. The game of cricket transformed, and that's why my talk is called The Changing Face of Cricket. It transformed from that black and white creative brief into the brief that was given for that Maruti van. It was dynamic, it spoke to you, and it was a completely changed animal. And that's what it changed from this. And I'm not going to show you a playing picture, but I'm going to show you an image that I know anyone who's an amateur or a professional photographer would appreciate, because this really talks about the modern game, what it used to be and what it is now. It's unexpected, it's unorthodox, it's colorful, and it's global. This is a picture of a Masai Mara warrior actually trying his hand out at cricket, and I think that is where the game has gone from where it used to be to where it is. But how about trying to trace this transformation? So let me start by talking about this strange animal. And I'm hoping that there are a few of you who absolutely despise the game of cricket, either A, or B, know nothing about it. So if you belong to that second category, or you happen to be from America, then you will know nothing about the game. And when I first landed on those shores and I had to try and explain this game in a nutshell, I actually carried this tea towel with me. And rather than me waste my breath, and I could see those wonderful sights, I said, look, have a look at this. And that sort of says, in case you can't read it from there, you have two sides, one out in the field, one in. Each man that's in the side that's in goes out, and when he's out, he comes in, and the next man goes in until he's out. When they're all out, the side that is out comes in, and the side that's been in goes out and tries to get those out coming in. It makes no sense. And this is supposed to be this wonderful sport, apparently, that we all follow and love, that makes lots of money. It really makes no sense. So how is it that we've actually come to make sense of it? So moving forward, yes, that date comes in. It was not just in 1983, but yes, in 1932, when India first went and played their test match, and it was a prince a Maharaja, who actually led the country going in 1932 to England. Strangely, this is a photograph of the team getting off the ship and then landing at Victoria Station, because that's how they traveled in those days. It took a few months. And this man, the Maharaja of Porbandar, was the captain of the team. He had scored all of 22 runs in his lifetime, yet he was captain of India. The famous quote about him, and it was true, mind you, was that he had more runs, or rather more Rolls Royces, than runs. And it was a fact. Luckily, when they actually stepped out on the field on the 25th of June, he was in the side, but he didn't walk out on the field to captain because better sense prevailed. That was him. That was the Maharaja. Since then, we've had many more Maharajas leading India, the Nawab of Pataudi, and of course Saurav Ganguly, the latest Maharaja to lead an Indian side out onto the field. But moving forward, coming many years forward, talking about the transformation of a game, luckily it happened in a country called Australia. I'm fast forwarding from 1932 to the 1970s. Till then, the game was still black and white. It was still played over 5 days. It was still that confusing American explanation for the game. So how was it that that transformation began? And this is where the seeds were first sown. And fortunately, it was sown in Australia, because they are an irreverent nation. Just to give you a quick anecdote, there was a series called the Bodyline series that happened with the stiff upper lip Englishmen against the Australians. Now, that was when the Englishmen actually stole a march on the Australians, and they landed up and they had these very nasty tactics of bowling at the body and injuring them. The Aussies had to find some way of getting back. So one evening, when they were getting all this short stuff bowled at them, of course, they would hand it back. And Douglas Jardine, the very stiff upper lip captain of England, he came to visit the Australian dressing room because they had let out a few choice words. And he went and knocked on the door to the Australian captain and said, "Sir, I must point out to you that I'm rather upset." "Why?" "One of your boys on the field actually deigned to call me a bastard." So the Australian captain, most apologetically, said, "Douglas, give me a moment, mate." And he turned around to the rest of his dressing room and said, "Oi, which of you bastards call this bastard a bastard?" Naturally, Douglas was speechless, and he left. But that really sums up what the Aussies were all about. And luckily, it was this irreverence that they translated onto the cricket field, and the first seeds of the informality of the game was sown by this man, Kerry Packer, who decided to take on the establishment. And can you imagine that cricket was being marketed in this unorthodox manner? There was all these skimpily clad models who were wearing T-shirts and not much else. Perhaps a pair of pads, but that's about it to protect them. Pads, I mean leg guards, but it wasn't protecting anything else. And it really infused an entire generation of youngsters who grew up maybe on American or Australian rules, football, on rugby, on soccer, and so many other things. Surfing, they were big into surfing. So they combined all that to turn it into something so different. Now, the only thing, slight flaw there was the West Indians, these big fast bowlers, they were given pink to wear. They were told to be pretty in pink. I mean, remember, this was 1976. It was not a metrosexual color. Men didn't go around wearing these lovely pink shirts, but yet the West Indians were made to wear pink. It was daring, it was different, it was bold. Cricket was going where nobody imagined it could possibly go. Moving forward, if you have a look at that, pretty much sums it up. Clap, clap, jolly good on the right, and that whole transformation coming to slam, bam, fast cricket. As expected, yes, we're talking about that date, just 24 hours before another momentous event happened in the history of Indian photography. We had the 25th of June 1983. Now I've chosen this image for a reason, because until this point, Indian cricket hadn't witnessed this. Now remember, this is Lord's in London, far, far away from the shores of India, where you're used to mobs, you're used to big crowds. And here it was in a faraway land. These guys had just won they'd won a World Cup, but it was essentially 4 or 5 cricket matches in a row. They'd upset these West Indians, no longer wearing pink, they were wearing white. And you had this crowd gathering. Similar big crowds gathered in India. Suddenly the political establishment was involved. There was Gyani Zail Singh with the trophy. There was Mrs. G holding up this wonderful Prudential World Cup. And suddenly people were sitting up and taking notice. This was something very different, something very unexpected. Strangely enough though, people were wondering that was there anything more that was going to come? Because this is a photograph taken from very recently, 2009, 2010, when the hangover of 1983 still had not gotten over. And the same winning team would come year after year. It's our first anniversary, our second, our third, our 9th, our 10th, our silver jubilee. There was nothing else for India to celebrate. So these guys would keep parading all the time. It's the same 1983 winning team. Luckily, we had something turning up later that was to change and therefore continue the transformation for the game. The first thing that happened to follow from the controversial Kerry Packer is that in 1992, they started playing cricket at night. There was a slogan that said, big boys play at night in the 70s. Well, they followed it up. Naturally, it was the Australians who did it. In 1992, all the teams got together in these wonderful, colourful uniforms. Notice the West Indians in a marvellous maroon, no longer in pink. They negotiated, paid lots of big bucks for that. And of course, you had all these gorgeous stadia and some beautiful sunsets thrown in as well. This was cricket at its prettiest. Now, if you overall look at all this, the broadcast industry was changing as well. You saw a picture of my office. Well, very briefly, without narrating an incident, I mean, I got into where I got over a glass of beer. I was sent many years ago in 2001 to basically do an interview in the morning, an interview in the evening in Harare, Zimbabwe. I saw a bunch of people sitting on a pub on the boundary line watching Tendulkar score 100, and I was like, we should do a story on this. And my Welsh producer said, no, we're not touching that. And then that was more West Indian than Welsh, but never mind. And I sort of said, okay, I'll go ahead and do it, and it started a trend. But more importantly, it was not about my trend, it was about something happening out there in the world. Now, no, this is not a different presentation. This is very much a very key slide in my presentation, because a lot of people ask, there's that big controversy, that big argument. People from other sports turn around and say, you people, they point fingers like I own the game. They look at me and say, you people have ruined us. You people in the world of cricket have made sure that nobody follows football and kabaddi and hockey and badminton and tennis and kho-kho and ludo and carom and whatnot. But the point is there's a reason why cricket succeeded. Nobody wanted to exclude other games. There are lots of people who play all the sports, and we love other sports. But the point is there was a reason why cricket succeeded, and that is the reason for my slide. Now it works as a noun, as an adjective, as well as a verb. But for the moment I should use it only in a very polite part of speech, and as well for a good reason, because not only did it have sex appeal and attraction, it actually stood for something. Because if the success from S didn't happen, then nothing would happen as far as in 83 we won in 85, we continued winning, and that's why the support happened. You add to that the E for entertainment. If you didn't have all those beautiful posters, if you didn't have the cheerleaders, if you didn't have all the music playing between overs, it wouldn't be an attraction. It wouldn't be something for the people to come and have a good time with. And to take a little liberty with a word here and there, you needed the excitement factor. You needed a format to change. You needed adaptation. And that's exactly what happened in September 2007. Yes, I did finish most of that. That was the actual bottle consumed by MS Dhoni. The rest of it was given to me, but importantly, it was a landmark day. The format had changed. Suddenly, it was not about 5 days and confusing the daylights out of the Americans, even though now we'd like to do nothing but that. But it was about going from 5 days to 1 day to like going to watch a movie. It was all done and dusted in 3 hours. You got your entertainment, You got your music, you got your food, you got your champagne, you got your beer, and it was entertainment, and hence the game was evolving. It was something that the people wanted. That was a picture of MSD on the flight back to Mumbai. He was still wondering. He couldn't afford a haircut, but yet he had taken the nation to victory in a big tournament. No, honestly, the team really didn't know where they were before the whole thing had started. They had dropped Tendulkar, they had dropped Dravid, they had dropped Ganguly. They said, we don't care about this format, we'll just go and have some fun. And the fun turned out into a circus that is here to stay. And I think this photograph, there are lots of photographs of cricket with the glamour and the glitz, but this photograph says it all. The demigods had come, they were here to stay. Look at all the welcome that they got onto the ground, and this was, I think, symbolic of where cricket had gone, where cricket had come. Yes, the cheerleaders are there, and the fact that I chose this photograph may kind of define my leaning towards one franchise or the other, but we're not getting personal here. Here's another one to leave you with. If you look at the photograph on the left, traditionally it was the cricketers or the cricket cheerleaders who got paid to cheer. But in football, it was the crowd who themselves were the cheerleaders, and I think cricket is fast moving from the left to the right to join sports like football internationally, where people themselves are painting their faces, they themselves are dancing in the aisles. You don't need the cheerleaders, well, maybe once in a while, but the entire stadium is a gathering of cheerleaders. So to conclude, typically for those of you who love the game, when you finish the game of cricket, or the end of a day's play as it were, even in those white flannels, the umpire lifts the stumps to call stumps at the end of the day. So I'm going to call stumps on my little presentation here, but with a little difference, because this is where cricket is now headed. You might call stumps, but you'll call stumps with a zing bail, because the bails light up. It's technology. It's everything we talked about, the entertainment, the glitz, the glamour, the sex appeal, but you simply have to add the technology factor to it, and you know that there's no bounds to where cricket heads in the new millennium. Just to leave you with one final image, yes, it's coming back a full circle. I did mention technology, but you can have all this, but you must come back a full circle to the human factor, because this is the unpredictability of the game. You know it's growing bigger, it's growing better, it's also growing bolder, and the sky's the limit. Thank you.